Hello and welcome again to part 11 of the Robin family stories with me, Nannie. Well, today I have two more exciting stories for you. Do you remember in part 10 last time we went to the woodlands and we had some fun with the wind that was blowing all the trees? Well, today the robins have a very important task. Are you ready? Are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. It's called How Many Trees? How many trees? Little Richard Robin was unusually eager to get to school one morning. Come on, hurry up, he chirped to his cousins Roly and Rosemary as they all trotted along. I don't want to be late today. Miss Thrush is taking my class on a woodlands tree count. We've been asked to do it, he added importantly. What? Count trees? Said Rosemary, surprised. Whatever for? To make sure that the woodland still has lots and lots, Richard told her, and that when trees get old and fall over, or when gales blow them down, nice new baby trees begin to grow in their place. Just think how awful it would be if we didn't have any. Why, the woodlands wouldn't be the woodlands anymore. His two cousins agreed, and later that morning, while they were having their lessons indoors, they did feel a little envious of Richard and his classmates who had set off with their teacher. Now, said Miss Thelma Thrush briskly, you all know what to do, don't you? And you all have the pictures of the trees you are to count. So you will know exactly what you're looking for. Yes, Miss Thrush, chorused her class. Richard and his friend Flossie Frog were looking for oak trees, and it was lucky they were so good at counting, because there were lots of them. Indeed, everyone worked very hard, but it was such fun. It didn't seem like work at all. At the end of the morning, Miss Thrush gathered her pupils and their long lists together and counted up all the oaks, elms, firs, maples, chestnuts, sycamores, and all the many others besides. Well, I certainly don't think there will be a tree shortage in the woodlands, said Miss Thrush. Well done, everybody. Just then the class heard a soft, strange whispering, which was coming from the bend in the stream. Don't forget me, it seemed to say. Don't forget me, don't forget me. Richard went to investigate, and there he found a tiny little willow that nobody had noticed before. Of course we won't forget you, he assured the baby tree. And sure enough, when Richard told Miss Thrush what he had discovered, she put the little willow right at the top of her list. So, do you have lots of trees where you live? Do you remember in my last story, last time, I told you about the horse chestnut tree that lives opposite us, opposite our house? Do you remember what I found there? I found these horse chestnuts, which are also called conkers. And we had a story last time about conkers, didn't we? These are the prickly shells, and the conkers nestle inside them like this. And then they fall off the trees along with the leaves. And sometimes with a bit of help from the little animals, the shells open up and you see a conker or two inside. But look at this one. Who's been eating this conker, I wonder? What animal ate it? Do you remember from the last story? What was it called? It was a creature with a bushy tail. It's quite a funny word. It began with s. It was a squirrel. Yes, if you got that right, well done. Squirrels like to eat lots of nuts in the autumn, and they gather them up and take them into their nests so that they can go to sleep to hibernate all winter. And if they get a little bit hungry, they can have a little snack in their nest. And so that brings us on to the next story today, because our second story is called Sleepyheads, because there were some little animals in the woodlands who wanted to have a sleep. They were getting very tired. Shall we find out what happens? Are you ready? Let's go then. Some of the little robin's friends can do nothing but yawn. Oh. Well, said Mrs. Rebecca Robin, smiling at her daughter Rosemary, I think this is a very good afternoon's work, don't you? Rosemary gazed admiringly at the line-up of glowing pots on the table of tree stump house's cosy kitchen, and smiled too. Yes, I like making jams as well, and sometimes chutneys. She and her mother had worked very hard and made lots of lovely jams, jellies and chutneys to last the Robin family all through the winter. Goodness me, what a magnificent display, said Mr. Robin as he and Roly came in from the garden. Can we try some for tea? But of course, Rosemary told her father. There's a special little jar of blackberry jelly Mummy and I made for a tea time taster. This is actually orange marmalade, but I also made some blackberry jam that we had picked in the forest or the woods. You can pick the blackberries, can't you, and make some lovely jam. And I think that's just what the little robins had done. After a delicious tea, Mrs. Robin suggested that on Sunday morning, Roly and Rosemary should take some jars of jam, jelly and pickles to old Mrs. Woodmouse and their friends, the Dormouse family. I expect Mr. and Mrs. Dormouse are getting ready for their winter sleep, she said. Well, Roly replied, Donald was yawning like anything at school on Friday. Mr. Rook told us to make sure he got home without falling asleep on the way. Oh dear. I don't expect he'll be at school on Monday, added Rosemary, but I know his alarm clock will be set for Christmas Day. So the next morning, the two little robins, carrying baskets of jams, jellies and pickles, set off. They went first to the Dormouse house in the bank, where they found Donald still yawning, helping his father and mother, who were yawning too, to put up the shutters at the windows. The sleepy Dormouse were delighted to see the two little robins, however, and were so pleased with their presents. They will be quite delicious when we wake up for a quick snack, said Mrs. Dormouse. Thank you so much, my dears. And please thank your mother and father to... She ended with such an enormous yawn that the two little robins found that they wanted to yawn too. Goodness me, exclaimed Rosemary, as she and her brother eventually trotted off to see old Mrs. Woodmouse. Isn't yawning catching? I wonder if we'll get to Mrs. Woodmouse without falling asleep. But of course they did. And that's our two stories today. But do you remember the song we sang last time about the wind blowing the branches off the trees? Shall we do that again now to finish our story time? Are you ready to be the big branches of those trees that they saw in the woodlands? Here comes the wind. Whoosh, whoosh, Whoosh goes the wind. Oh, what's the weather today? What's the weather today? It's windy and cold, windy and cold. What's the weather today? Let's put on our coats. Let's put on our coats. It's windy and cold, windy and cold. Let's put on our coats. Let's go to the woods. Let's go to the woods. It's windy and cold, windy and cold. Let's go to the woods. Let's find some conkers. Let's find some conkers. It's windy and cold, it's windy and cold, but let's find some conkers. Let's count the trees. Let's count the trees. It's windy and cold, but let's count the trees. Let's find some leaves. Oh, let's find some leaves. It's windy and cold, but let's find some leaves. Let's now go home. Let's now go home. It's windy and cold, so let's now go home. And now it's time for me, Nannie, to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me, and do join me again next time for another instalment of the Robin Family Stories. Bye-bye.